Is that the dick on your back?
We watched a movie. Yeah. We watched a movie. We watched it.
I lied.
So, here's the checklist. Bro talk with guns. Check. Tits and ass. Check.
Yes.
Gore. Check.
Yes.
Schwarzenegger. Check. We have the makings of a great American goddamn movie. And that's what we saw. It wasn't that great, but it was still okay.
It was just okay.
Let's fucking rage!
It's okay. Sabotage. Directed by David Ayer, who did End of Watch, which is a badass movie. This is along the same lines. What it is it's a SWAT team led by the badass Schwarzenegger, who fucking take my money already. Why don't you? Just take it.
Take it all.
And for the SWAT team, he's their leader. A whole bunch of shit goes wrong. They start getting picked off one by one. There's Mexican cartels involved. There's revenge, and there's families involved. And shit just gets fucked up, and there's a lot of spoilers, so that's all I'm going to say about it.
Yeah, you know, first thing, the gore scenes of this were effective. They were used well, but then they were also used too much. Like, that was like, I would never say that about, I would never say that about a Schwarzenegger action movie, because that's what you want. You want to have the gore, but sometimes they use it so excessively, it's like, we get it, it's supposed to be nice, like, oh, it's not brass. Like there's scenes like, when a guy's like nailed at the ceiling with his intestines hanging out, you're like, that's nasty, but then they show his body being like examined by the autopsy, and then they show more of it. I'm like, I know, it's like he was cut the fuck off.
It didn't really bother me, though.
I say, hey,
if you get a fucking R-rated action movie greenlit, just go balls to the wall. I mean, why not?
Just do a Dirty Sanchez in the middle of it too. Fuck it. It's rated R. Let's go all the way.
There was lesbians making out,
that was
touching each other's boobies.
I like that.
So I mean, they're doing what they can. They're doing something for America.
But you know, the only thing, I guess the overall feeling of this movie for me was like, I went into, maybe it was my fault. I went in expecting like a throwback Schwarzenegger action film with the rated R boobs and tits and all that good stuff with the big guns. I like all that stuff. But the problem is it felt like it was so like 21st century-ish. You know, I don't know how best to describe. It's like we don't want to say, like, it wanted to be really badass action, like a good 80s awesome movie that you feel good and like you go out and want to fucking rob people and shit, or, you know, just rage around. But then it also wanted to be like, you know, it had to be emotional and heartfelt, and it had to be like this emotional, like, tinge. It just felt like this filter on the screen of it.
I don't know. It was really serious. I mean, it was extremely super serious the whole time, and you did have badass action scenes.
Yeah, there were great action scenes.
Technically, the direction, they did some, like, it felt like you were playing a video game at some point. So
there was also,
stuff like that. There was a really fun stuff that they did technically with the movie, and technically, it's a badass action movie. But on the surface, it's just not that entertaining.
Nah.
It just wasn't that entertaining. As good as some shit they do, you're like, that was cool, that was badass. The gunshot looked real, that was really cool. That was a badass scene. It was technically entertaining, but at the same time, it wasn't entertaining. Like, it just was. You were just kind of like, that was cool.
Yeah, you know, it
wasn't fun.
Yeah, it's like when you go to see a Schwarzenegger old-time Stallone kind of movie, and you come out and you're like, fuck yeah! But with this one, you're like, fuck yeah.
And I get it, they were trying to make a serious movie, which I kind of enjoy that too. It was like, okay, Schwarzenegger gets to play a serious role in a serious movie again, and I kind of want to see that. It kind of, for me, it was like, okay, this isn't as much as an 80s throwback. So I thought that was going to be cool going in, but at the same time, I came out and it was like, there was some funny stuff in it, a couple funny lines, I guess, and stuff like that, but it just wasn't that entertaining, and it was just kind of groggy. It was kind of blurry and just kind of like...
That's what I mean, and that's what I felt like. It kind of gave you that depressing feeling, like, you know, it's like you kind of leave and you kind of feel like, I don't know, it just didn't feel like make you feel good. I know it's supposed to, when you see this movie, there's a subject material at the bottom of this movie, and you're going to get like why it would make you feel like that, but still, it's a Schwarzenegger movie, and the thing is, Schwarzenegger is a charming guy, so he doesn't have to do much to come off as genuine. Like, he obviously is a genuine guy, and he comes off as that. Like, he's a real-life superhero. Like, if you had to pick one, it's like, well, I love you, Arnold, fuck. And he's like, I know. But, you know, but the other guys, sometimes they were so over-the-top trying to be a badass.
Okay. Yeah.
You know, like, there's one guy, like, you know, it's just like, there was one scene in particular where he's like, you know, they're like, fuck yeah, fuck this, fuck that. It's like non-stop fuck, and they have to, like, try to show their cocks, and like, I'm a badass, awesome guy.
It's like the entire freaking time. And if you remember in End of Watch, as badass as that movie was, one of my only problems with that movie was when they went to the Mexican cartel guys and they're in the car, and it was like, it was just too much. It was like, motherfucker, fucker, I'm gonna get some fucking popcorn, fucking cook that popcorn, let's go pop! Pop 10 seconds, pop, motherfucker,
pop! Those are weasel, because the weasel go pop!
But every other word was fucking. It's like, we get it, you're badasses, you're ghetto, you're whatever it is. It was the same thing with the team. I couldn't really like the team that much, even though in parts you're not supposed to. But the SWAT team, at first, you're like, oh yeah, they're a team, they get along together, it's gonna be fun to watch like how they interact and stuff. But then they were just kind of like, you're assholes.
Did you know, they were kind of like, they were like grow-up toy G.I. Joes.
Yeah.
Like that, you know, like when you see G.I. Joe, they were like that, but they were like the adult version of G.I. Joe, but they were like so corny.
Well, they were like a high school asshole jock version. Yeah. They're like, yeah, like an asshole football player. How you
know what? It was almost like
the entire time.
It was like a poor man's Expendables team.
Yeah.
Because the Expendables team were Elite Force 2, and they had the interaction. They were badasses, but they didn't have to go over the top all the time when they were interacting with each other. Everybody knew it.
Like, we get it. You're a badass.
Yeah,
you're a badass.
There was just no cohesion to the group, and there was no chemistry with the group really, except between Schwarzenegger and some of the other guys on the team. But most of it was just like.
And that's the whole thing, really. The only guy I really rooted for in this movie was Schwarzenegger. That's the only guy I could really get behind and care about. And there was this detective lady, and I thought she should have been cast by somebody different. It's not that she did a terrible job, but it was just like, I was just like, you're not enjoyable to watch on screen. They could have put somebody else in there, and I would have enjoyed those moments on screen. And she carried so much of the movie through that. It was just like, I wish it was somebody else.
You know what
I don't care.
I'm getting tired of these fuckers that don't have accents, and they try to force them to do an accent.
Yeah.
Like, she tried to do the Southern accent the entire movie, and
it was like she was overdubbed.
It was terrible.
It did, yeah.
And she might have been a better actress if it hadn't been for that. Like, I can't talk British. Like, I couldn't do that for like nonstop for an hour and a half. It's just fucking terrible.
Exactly.
But I will say that the team did have neat little call names. Like, there was like Grifter, and then there was Pyro. It would be like it would be like one of those things. Like, hey mom, can I get the new Grifter toys? Like, sure, honey. And like it was like Pyro, and then there was like Sugar.
There was some good jokes too. Like when someone they're sitting in the van, they're like, "Who dropped ass?" Shit like that. That was funny. But so they start getting picked off, and the shit starts happening. And really, the main thing with this movie is Schwarzenegger. When he speaks, it's like I don't think he's a bad actor at all. No. I'm not blaming his acting, but just because it's Schwarzenegger and you love him so much, everything he says, even if it's dead serious, I laugh my ass off the entire movie.
It's hard not to.
Like, what are you doing? It's like you laugh. I mean, that's all you need.
Like you mentioned, there was one scene when the girl's like, she's like, I need to talk to you about one of your teams that were killed. He's like, come inside the house. Like, and it was meant to be like a serious scene, but it was just funny the way he said it. And that's not anything on him. That comes off like that's again like he could even deliver. You know what? That's how Arnold is. Arnold is so badass. He can deliver great lines that are written, but he can do it so effectively. You don't give a shit. It can be terrible, and you're like, I love you, Arnold.
Yeah, I know exactly. He's so goddamn charismatic. You don't give a shit how badly he delivers lines sometimes. Yeah,
I'd vote for him to be president.
I don't give a shit, man. It's Arnold Schwarzenegger.
I know we can't because it's Constitution, but whatever.
Demolition Man. But so yeah, I mean, ultimately at the end of the day, this movie, it had some badassness to it. It had some really cool action scenes to it. I enjoyed the gore and the R-ratedness of it because we don't get enough R-rated action movies anymore. And it's fucking Schwarzenegger that's in it. And the ending of the movie, I won't say because it's a big twist or whatever, but the very end of the movie is what I wanted from the whole movie. It was just badass. I liked it. One man against that kind of thing. It was a really fucking cool scene.
It was like if you heard that song, Desperado.
Yeah, that's what I want. And there's a really good car action scene towards the end too, where they're chasing.
But when
each other.
The way it ends is just like, oh, okay.
Yeah, there's just it just never really landed emotionally, and you can tell they were trying to at some points. But it's an action movie. It is what it is. It's not the greatest action movie ever, but you could waste your money worse on something. I mean, I'd give it a 6.5 probably.
Hey, I'm going to give this movie about a 7.0, 7.0. I guess I'll settle on a 7.5. It's not a bad movie necessarily. It's not a great movie either. It's a movie that I guess you'll enjoy if you're into the action stuff, the guns and explosions and stuff like that. That's all going on. There's lesbians in it. I mean, that's always good to have in too. But at the same time, it's so abrupt the way they end certain action scenes. You're like, I want it more. And then at the same time, you're also saying this movie is way longer than it actually should be. Like, they could have cut off like a good 20 minutes of the movie, especially when you just want Schwarzenegger in that role that you've always loved him in, and they just cut him out at certain points. They try to give more screen time to these other characters you just don't give a fuck about. And then sometimes they come over the top. Like, they try to make it is atmospheric in a way, and it's got that thrillerness to it because you're trying to find out who's the person behind these killings that are going on, so you're kind of into it for a while. But then at the same time, they kind of drop the ball when you find out what's going on, and you're just like, okay. It didn't really live up to what I wanted to live up to. Just at the end of the day, it's still not a bad movie, but it's still, 7.5, so I think it's a solid score.
I agree with you completely. And the question of the day is, what is your favorite New Age Schwarzenegger movie? Since he came back into acting, what is your favorite performance by Schwarzenegger? For me, it's definitely The Last Stand.
That has to be mine, too.
That was just fun. It was Schwarzenegger. That was perfect. So, till next time, guys, I'm Mike, he's Jay, and we'll see you next time we watch the movie.
Boobies.
Directed by David Ayer, who directed the potatoes. Directed by David Ayer, who directed... David Ayer. I don't know, with potatoes.
Gators.
Smashed potatoes. Directed by David Ayer, who also wrote, or I don't know if he wrote it, but he directed End of Days, which was a... What the fuck?
We watched a movie. Yeah. We watched a movie.